Now I want to bring in CNN national security analyst Juliette Kayyem and two former assistant U.S. attorneys, Bill Cowden and Renato Mariotti. As Boris was going over the story, Juliette, you were shaking your head at the strategy about...
It's like made up. I mean, the idea that you can invoke executive privilege after the fact to protect people who have already essentially talked under oath is like, I don't know what the legal term is, but like gobbledygook. Like, I mean, it's like you can't do it. And more importantly, you know, the strategy that he's talking about for President Trump sort of brings him into essentially the conspiracy potentially for obstruction of justice. He's publicly now saying, fire number one or number two in the investigation, you know, don't cooperate, undermine the investigation. And he's saying it publicly. I mean, Bannon's saying it publicly, which if I'm Bannon, I would get a lawyer.
Yeah, John Dean said earlier that he should probably keep his mouth shut, Renato, because that is a conspiracy if that does happen.
Well, I think Bannon feels pretty safe because he's trying to urge the President of the United States to do something, and there's no one with any courage in the Republican Party to do anything to stop him. I mean, I think the nightmare scenario that I think everyone is concerned about here, or not everyone, but I'd say a lot of patriotic Americans are concerned about here, is that Donald Trump does fire Rod Rosenstein, does try to get rid of Bob Mueller, and the Republicans just sit idly by and let it happen. Certainly some of what Bannon is suggesting, Juliette's right, you could, whatever the word you want to use, whether it's a gobbledygook or ridiculous, it's a non-starter as a legal strategy, but some of what he's saying is serious, and it's going to have serious consequences for this country. If Donald Trump can get away with firing the people who are investigating him, then what does that mean for the future? That a president can do anything he wants, commit any crime, and fire the people investigating him? Well, it's very, very scary.
William, what do you think of this and the idea of retroactively that you can claim executive privilege?
Well, I think Juliette's right. That retroactive is just not going to happen. I think the other issue is I think it's a little too late. You've got now an investigation that the Southern District of New York has picked up. They're now looking at this. They're looking at campaign finance violations. It looks like Trump's attorney is saying, I paid this myself. That's hard to believe. They're going to look at that. They're going to figure out that there's been a violation of campaign finance. There's been a violation of reporting these. The payments are so close to the election. These are not just your typical payments. They're related to the campaign. This has benefited the campaign, and this money now that's been paid is a violation of federal law. And so if Trump didn't know that, you know, then he's not involved in it. But it's hard to believe that the attorney for Trump didn't tell Trump, and I think you've got the Southern District of New York looking at that now. So there's really two fronts here, and I don't think this is a situation that Trump can just say, I'm going to fire Rod Rosenstein and all's done, or I'm going to fire Bob Mueller and all's done. He's got two offices now. There's 220 prosecutors in the Southern District of New York. They know what they're doing. There's a new front on this, independent, and I think that this idea that things are going to go away if Bob Mueller gets fired is just wrong.
Yes. So as I said earlier, that Steve Bannon was talking to aides in the West Wing. Yeah. So what does this say about the mood in the White House right now among Trump aides?
I'd say, where is John Kelly? I mean, I think we know where he is, that there's no chief of staff anymore. Because if you're John Kelly, your goal would be get White House people who, let's remind everyone, we're paying for, they're paid by the taxpayers, to focus on policy, a potential missile, you know, attack on Syria, whatever else is going on in the agencies. You know, the fact that Bannon sort of ingratiating himself with whomever, and who knows who those people are, suggests that Kelly has sort of lost all control of any semblance of order in the White House.
The reporting tonight is that Kelly has found himself on a downward slide, and I'm quoting sources familiar with the situation said, and also he's a retired Marine Corps general, is horrified at the highly charged display Trump made against Mueller and the search of Cohen, according to one person familiar with
in front of the generals.
In front of the generals. So with that said, Renato, more on this stunning news from the fallout from the FBI raid on Michael Cohen's office and homes. Why are prosecutors honing in on this Access Hollywood tape?
Well, we don't know the entire story, Don, but one thing that we do know is that apparently they're looking not just at campaign finance violations, but also at bank fraud and wire fraud. At least that's been some of the published reporting. And if that's the case, perhaps Michael Cohen, for example, obtained a loan under false pretenses from a bank. For example, if you make a false declaration to a bank about the purpose of the loan or the source of the funds that you're using for, as collateral or something like that, there potentially, he could have committed bank fraud. And I will tell you, when I first saw that there was campaign finance violations, I raised an eyebrow because that's a more speculative charge. But something like bank fraud or wire fraud is really the bread and butter that federal prosecutors investigate and charge on a regular basis when it comes to white-collar crimes.
So, William, then what would the tape have to do with that? And would the FBI and the Southern District of New York prosecutors had to have some evidence related to criminal wrongdoing specifically involving that tape?
Well, so to get the warrant, prosecutors had to have probable cause to believe that a crime had been committed and that there was evidence of the crime in the location that they wanted to search, which would be Cohen's offices or home. In terms of bank fraud, as Ronaldo points out, bank fraud, wire fraud, serious crimes. It's very easy to commit a bank fraud. A false statement to a bank in a loan application, or a false statement to a bank when they're trying to do their due diligence about why you're opening an account and you're lying to the bank about what the purpose of the account is, could be a federal crime. So those are all crimes that Cohen can be investigated for. See where the evidence goes on that. In terms of the tape itself, one of the thoughts is if Cohen is saying that Trump didn't know about the Stormy Daniels payment, one of the things the prosecutors are going to want to look at is what other payments did Cohen make or possibly make? Did Trump know about any of the other ones? Because if Trump knows about other ones and doesn't know about Stormy Daniels, it tends to undercut the idea that Trump didn't know about Stormy Daniels. So prosecutors build these cases by going piece by piece by piece. The Stormy Daniels payment comes very close to the election. The Trump, the tape on the bus comes out very close to the time that there's a dump of documents from WikiLeaks that is a distraction. And if the Trump folks are saying we had nothing to do with the WikiLeaks dump, well, the WikiLeaks dump looks like, from press reports, it came from the Russians. So if the Russians got the stuff, gave it to WikiLeaks, and then Trump's campaign officials or somebody in the Trump campaign is controlling when that information is coming out, you don't have to steal the stuff to be part of a conspiracy to break the law.
All right.
If the stuff is gotten in a legal manner and then it comes out later because Trump's controlling when it's coming out, that's a problem.
All right, that's what I was going to ask you, Juliet, and I know I have to go, but this is an important question. Listen, what is criminal about wanting to prevent a tape and having your attorney do it? I mean, it may be salacious, it may be embarrassing, but is it a crime?
Not necessarily, but he's running for office. We have all sorts of other laws that might have been violated. Michael Cohen is in big trouble. I hope he recognizes that, because it's not just about Stormy Daniels. The fact that they're focusing on the Access Hollywood tape, just exactly what was just being said. The Access Hollywood tape, for those of us in counterterrorism and national security, has always been the weirdest thing. Access Hollywood tape comes out, WikiLeaks dump. I don't believe in coincidences. I just don't, right? And so that correlation of exact timing, the tape comes out and then the WikiLeaks dump to sort of, then focus on Hillary, has long been thought of as something is going on here. And I think if Michael Cohen knew something about it, that's bigger than a Stormy Daniels tape. Let's just say that.
I appreciate the discussion. Thank you all.